That is a very good question as well. He's asking heavy versus light tackle, what is the difference? And that is a good question to bring up. It's a good thing to cover because so often that's a misconception. For example, the 12-hour extreme trip. We got this new hydrofoil assisted catamaran at Hubbard's Marina called the Flying Hub 2. It goes around 40 to 50 miles an hour. And it takes you out to the middle grounds, elbow, and surrounding areas to fish for truly monster fish. And we tell people, bring heavy tackle. On the website, heavy tackle, 6 or 9-aught reels. And people show up with 4-aughts with 50 wanting to catch a 90-pound amberjack or a 40-pound grouper. It's like, come on, man. Unfortunately, I didn't bring my big tackle with me because I was out fishing for hogfish just recently, so I don't have the big stuff with me. But to give you an idea of big tackle, to me, big tackle means at least a 6-aught. But generally, when I'm fishing for an amberjack or I want a 20, 30-pound grouper, I've got a 9-aught reel, or at least like an 80-wide reel, and at least 80-pound to 100-pound main line, and at least 100-pound leader, if not 125, or as much as 225. I fish for amberjack with 14-aught hooks and a 4-pound piece of bait and a 150-pound leader, an 80-pound braid with a 125-pound mono top shot on a 9-aught reel and a rod that looks like a broomstick. And then you put the winch on your back, you set that thing on the rail, put your leg up on the rail and crank them in. It's a lot of fun, but big tackle means big tackle. And when you have big tackle, you have big baits. Because when you have a hook like this, you've got to have a big bait. So that way that hook isn't hanging out the side of the bait. Howard's got an example of a 6-aught right there. That's a 6-aught reel, so that would be your minimum. That would be a small big tackle setup. So that's a 6-aught. You've got like a 4-aught up here. This is also considered a 40 or 50 wide. So it really just depends on your definition of big tackle. But to me, big tackle means 9-aught reel, 80 to 100 pound main line, 100 to 150 pound leader, 10 to 12-aught hook. Generally, when I go offshore fishing, for example, on our 39, our 44 hours, or our 12-hour extreme, where I'm going fishing with my buddies on the Flying Hub 1 or the Flying Hub 2, and we're going out to deep water, I bring 3 different setups for bottom fishing. My 3 setups for bottom fishing, the first one I bring is my favorite. My 2-speed reel with about a 4 to 6 ounce sled and your double snell 5 to 6-aught J hooks. And this would be 40 or 50 pound main line with the 40 or 50 pound leader. Leader's always fluorocarbon. Main line, generally what I use is braid with a long monofilament top shot. The rule of thumb on that is about 2/3 of your line in the water should be monofilament. So if I'm fishing 120 foot of water, I'm going to use a majority braid so that way I have the sensitivity and the reel capacity for big fish. But then I top it with monofilament, or in this case, thank you Dogfish Tackle for the fluorocarbon top shot. And I use around maybe 120 foot, so I'd be using around 60 to 70 feet of monofilament top shot. And then for snapper, I'd be using about a 4.5 to 5 foot fluorocarbon 40 to 50 pound leader with around a 6-aught J hook. For anything that sits there and nibbles at your bait, I use a J hook and a faster reel, a 2-speed reel. That way when I feel that bite, I can start cranking and set the hook home. The 2-speed reel is great when I'm fishing for snapper. The reason why, a lot of times back a few years ago when I was doing seminars, someone would ask, hey, do you need a 2-speed reel? I'd say no. Well, nowadays 2-speed reels have gone down in price. You can pick a reel like this up for around $300, $350, and that's not too expensive when we're talking fishing tackle, especially a 2-speed reel. A few years ago, that same reel would have been like $700. So the thing about a 2-speed reel is when you're in high-speed gear ratio, I'll show you. See where my lead is? I'm going to do 1 revolution of my reel. Uh-oh. I caught something. All right. We'll try this again. All right. See where my lead is? I'm going to do 1 revolution of the reel. See how much that lead moved up? Now I'm going to put it in low speed and do the same thing. 1 revolution of the reel. See how much less that moved? This is a 6-to-1 gear ratio high speed and a 3-to-1 gear ratio low speed. So basically what that means is the higher the gear ratio, the more line I'm pulling in with every revolution, which means more speed, less power. The lower the gear ratio, the lower the speed I'm reeling in, but the higher the power. So the benefit of a 2-speed reel when I'm snapper fishing is I've got my 40-pound test, I've got my light tackle. When I feel that mango bite, I'm able to really start cranking and set that hook quickly. But if you're fishing for mangroves using sardines, how often do you guys hook into some bigger fish? Pretty often. Occasionally you just don't know what you're going to catch. Maybe you catch a world record porgy, maybe you catch a 20-pound gag. So to be able to hit a button and downshift, it's like switching reels. All of a sudden, this high-speed gear ratio reel, when I hit the button and shift into low gear, it's like this is high speed, hit the button, I'm in low speed. It's like I've switched out reels. Now I've got a totally different reel in my hand, and it helps me to get that fish up off the bottom more easily. So my 2-speed, high-speed gear ratio is my first tackle setup. My second tackle setup for deep water fishing would be my mid-range grouper rod. My red grouper rod, my smaller gap grouper rod. It would be my 6-aught reel, my 60 to 80 pound test, same setup. Braid backing with monofilament top. Now 60 to 80 pound test, I'd be using a 6 or 8 ounce lead. My rule of thumb is my main line, I drop to 0. So if I'm using 40 pound main line, I'm using a 4 ounce lead. If I'm using 60 pound main line, I'm using a, you guys are smart. All right, so that's what I would be using for my mid-range. And then for the leader there, I'd be using 60 to 80 pound leader, about a 7 to 8-aught circle hook. Any fish that's gonna come up and swallow my bait and start running me to the rocks, I use a circle hook. Because when he starts cranking, I wanna be able to start reeling and start gaining drag on him, all right? Now, for my let me back up. For my mid-range reel, again, around a 6-aught, and I want a medium gear ratio, a 4 to 1, 3 to 1 maybe 3.5 to 1. Now, for my third setup for deep water fishing would be my heavier tackle, my 9-aught that I was talking about before, 100-pound main line, 125-pound main line, 125 to 150-pound leader, that big hook I showed you before, a 10 or 12 ounce lead, and my bigger baits. That would be my bigger setup. So those are my 3 bottom fishing rods. Now, I also might bring with me on a trip like that, if I'm on the slower party boats, I'd bring a trolling rod. If I'm on the Flying Hub 1 or Flying Hub 2, I don't need a trolling rod. If we're going 40 miles an hour, how the heck am I gonna troll? So I wouldn't bring the trolling rod with me on a trip like that. But say I'm a 39 or 44 hour, I'd bring a trolling rod.